The Gauteng Education MEC, Matome Chiloane, says his department will cut budgets for scholar transport and school nutrition programs in order to retain teaching posts. This after national government slashed funds by 2.5 billion rand. Chiloane joining us now for more on his plans. MEC Chiloane, good evening to you and thank you for your time. Let's just get that on the record. Is it indeed your plan to cut scholar transport and school nutrition in order to save these teacher posts?
No, I think, you see, good evening to you, brother, and good evening to your viewers. I was misunderstood in that statement. I tried to clarify. We can't cut scholar transport because it's ring-fenced. The grant that goes directly into the transportation, scholar transport, including nutrition, it goes directly for quintile 1 to 3.
Yeah.
What I said, I was speaking to context that over and above the grant allocation that we've always been receiving, which is ring-fenced for that particular purpose, we can't touch it. That one we can't touch it. So provincial treasury gives us additional money because we've got additional learners who from time to time would need transport. For instance, if there are new areas, new development. So those are the areas we're looking at. We're not cutting any grant. The grant remains the same.
Yeah.
The nutrition remains the same. We're looking at broadly at all programs as to how do we move around to ensure that we are able to retain this teacher post. And we've been doing this for the past couple of years, irrespective of budget cuts. These budget cuts are not new.
Okay.
Ever since they've started, we've managed to keep our bulk, the number of teachers, and as well as we also do provision for growth posts, for instance, in schools where the learner population has increased.
So, MEC, talk to us then about, I guess this is the extra provision from the provincial treasury. We're not talking now about the grant that you say is ring-fenced. Yes. We're talking about this extra bit that you say you use at times in places that are underdeveloped. And this is where perhaps children will probably need that help much more. Is that where you're planning to cut? If so, how then are these children going to be helped?
Look, firstly, I'm not saying that we're going to cut completely. We're going to, obviously, every year we do an assessment of an area. You know, find an area where we used to have certain number of learners who will pass to two schools and around. And that area now it has changed, the dynamic has changed. Maybe perhaps there's a new school in the area closer by. That obviously affects the provision for scholar transport in that area. So we're looking at also all programs. Remember, we don't have budget allocated in those two areas alone. We've got LTSM that we have to look at, e-learning that we look at. So across the board in all our programs, we look at all the finances, the budget, the votes, and then we see how we utilize so that we can continue to curb this potential hemorrhage of educators. And we've been doing that quite well as a province for the past couple of years. We have kept our number, our teacher posts. So that's what we're looking at. So we're just finding innovative ways within the budget we have to ensure that we keep. Because we've made a commitment, and the commitment remains. We are not going to cut any educator in our province.
So let's talk nutrition then before we move away from transport and nutrition. This seems very, very important. And I think many of the parents listening tonight will be at ease to know that their children will not suffer in terms of transport. They will also not suffer when it comes to meals that they get at school, because oftentimes we're told by your department that these children rely on this meal because in some cases it is the only meal that the children do get, particularly those that come from very, very poor families. Is the nutrition program also untouched?
Definitely. Let me explain the nutrition program. The grant covers quintile 1 to 3 schools. Those are no fee paying schools. That's the grant that we get from National Treasury. But then we have this quintile 4 and 5 where the grant does not make provision for. And these, for instance, I'll give an example of a school in Jamestown called Freiburg High. That school is a quintile 5, but now it's next to directly to an informal settlement called Makaus and Maratwa. And that school has learners who come from those particular informal settlements. So that is a whole different context. So we come in, the school makes an application and we make an assessment that, okay, we have this certain number of learners who require intervention in this regard. And that's what we do. So that's what I'm saying, that we're looking at broadly. We're not going, the quintile 1, 2, 3, no fee pay school, those are untouched. You can't touch them. Okay. Because those are the communities, the families that we are talking about. But also that includes the 4 and 5s that we will look at. Every year we do make an assessment as to how we assist this and this one. And that comes from the provincial fiscus itself, where we negotiate with Treasury depending on the business case, then they're able to give us the necessary resources so that we can continue to support those learners.
All right. So let's then discuss the practicalities of what you need to deal with, basically robbing Peter in order to pay Paul. Are there or is there excess fat somewhere where you can definitely cut in order to plug the gaps without compromising essentials within the department? So, what am I specifically referring to? Money that goes to waste, either it be corruption or fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Aren't there areas where you know for certain that this area is where we can make huge savings from?
Okay, look, I won't say that there's, well, fruitless expenditure. I won't say that we have that. But for instance, if we have, let's look at the infrastructure budget, for instance. There were times where, there were years where we were not spending it properly, adequately. We would look at that, for instance. So there are many other programs within the department that we look at. We have schools, we've got, I'm just going to use infrastructure, the maintenance budget as well. If there's a delay in spending it, then we look at. So there's areas that we're going to look at broadly. The budget cuts are going to, as we're looking at in the next medium term, we're looking at about 4.5 billion. And obviously I have to say that the provincial government has really came on board to assist us to ensure that it insulates education because it's an apex priority for the province. So they also, provincial government does come in, Treasury, give us additional money so that we can continue to cushion against these budget cuts. So it's across, that it's multiple ways that we look at to ensure that we cushion against the job losses. And we have not experienced any ever since the budget cut started.
By the way, how much are we talking about here that you have left to work with? And with that amount, are you confident that you can save these 3,000 teacher posts that are reportedly at risk?
You want the actual figure?
Indeed.
All right. No, just to answer you, I will not speak. I don't want us to say. I won't be able to give the correct figure now because I don't have it here in front of me. But all I can tell you is that we have been. What these budget cuts have impacted us on is the growth aspect. That's what we've been having problems, struggling with. But irrespective of that, we've always found a way to make provision for growth. For instance, where the school, the ratio between the educator and learner ratio is compromised, we do have provision for growth. So, in that respect, for instance, the next academic year, we're looking at about 1,000 extra growth posts that we have identified to mitigate against the growing learner population in our province. So it depends. But to give you the actual figure, we're looking at about compensation of employees sits around 70% for Gauteng in our overall budget.
How much is that again?
70% of our budget, 70% of 64 billion.
Sure.
So you do the math, yeah.
Okay. The teachers that would likely be compromised, are you able to identify the immediate areas where those teachers were likely to lose jobs? And by the way, they might be listening themselves. Can you guarantee that their jobs are safe?
Yes, 100%. In Gauteng, we are not going to cut teacher posts in our province. That one we can ascertain our educators. If anything, we need to increase the number of educators because our system is growing. So how do you cut when your system grows with 32,000 additional learners every year? We can't cut. We don't have the luxury of cutting Gauteng. We have to make innovative ways. Fortunately, the provincial government has always come through whenever we make our business case to get additional funding so that we can see how we increase the compensation of employees. And national as well has really come through. So on our side, we are adamant that in Gauteng, our educators will not be compromised at all. Because it's pointless to take learners to school and there's no teacher. Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So we're not going to compromise the quality of education in our province in that regard.
Finally, MEC, the minister, your Minister of Basic Education, she did mention some time ago that she had a scheduled meeting with National Treasury. Are you aware whether that meeting has indeed taken place?
I think it's best that you would ask the ministry. I'm not aware. We only get updated as and when we have what we call Council of Education Ministers meeting. But generally, I wouldn't know that how far is that meeting, what were the discussion, what were the agreements thereof with that question.
All right. MEC Matome Chiloane, thank you very much for your time, the Gauteng MEC of Education. Yeah, tough job. It's a balancing act. She's going to have to rob somewhere in order to plug a gap somewhere else. That's the nature of things right now with these budget cuts. All right.